Welcome to the Slumber Lab, where we unravel the mysteries of the ancient world, one gentle whisper at a time. I'm so glad you're here tonight, settling into your favorite spot, letting the weight of the day slowly dissolve. Whether you're already tucked beneath soft blankets or just beginning to let your thoughts drift toward rest, this space is made for you. Tonight, we're going to journey back over 4,000 years, to the scorching sands of the Giza Plateau, where something extraordinary was taking shape. Stone by stone, block by block, human hands were creating what would become the last surviving wonder of the ancient world. But we won't rush there. We'll take our time, letting the story unfold like the gentle current of the Nile itself, carrying us through one of humanity's greatest achievements. Before we begin, take a moment to like this video if you're enjoying the peaceful journey, and subscribe for more restful explorations through history's greatest mysteries. Let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is in your corner of the world. There's something magical about knowing we're all connected across the globe by these ancient stories. Now, dim whatever lights you have around you, maybe adjust your pillow, and let's drift together toward the banks of the Nile, toward a time when the impossible became possible through human determination, ingenuity, and an understanding of the earth that we're only now beginning to rediscover. Picture this: the year is approximately 2580 BCE. The morning sun rises over a landscape that looks nothing like the tourist destination you might know today. No sprawling city of Cairo in the distance. No modern roads cutting through the desert. Just endless golden sand stretching toward the horizon, broken only by the green ribbon of the Nile Valley and the activity of what might be the largest construction project humanity has ever attempted. The air is already warm, though it's barely past dawn. Workers are stirring in temporary villages that house thousands upon thousands of people. These aren't slaves, as Hollywood might have you believe, but skilled craftsmen, seasonal laborers, and dedicated builders who have come from across the kingdom to participate in something they know will outlast them by millennia. You can almost hear it, can't you? The gentle murmur of voices speaking in ancient Egyptian, the soft scrape of tools against stone, the distant sound of boats on the Nile carrying precious cargo. There's a rhythm to it all, a peaceful persistence that will continue for nearly 3 decades. This is the story of how the Great Pyramid was built, not through magic or alien intervention, but through human ingenuity so profound, it still takes our breath away. It's a story told in limestone and granite, in copper tools and wooden sledges, in the patient accumulation of knowledge passed down through generations of builders who understood something we're only now remembering. That the greatest achievements come not from rushing, but from the steady, methodical application of wisdom and effort. Let's begin where all great stories begin, with a dream. Pharaoh Khufu, known to the Greeks as Cheops, ascended to the throne of Egypt around 2589 BCE. He inherited a kingdom that was already ancient by the standards of his time, a civilization that had been building monuments for over 1,000 years. But Khufu had a vision that would dwarf anything that had come before. Imagine him standing on the Giza Plateau for the first time, perhaps in the company of his master builder, Hemiunu. The plateau stretches before them, a natural platform of bedrock rising from the Nile's edge like a stage waiting for the performance of a lifetime. To the south, they can see the earlier pyramids at Saqqara and Dashur, the experimental monuments of Khufu's predecessors, each one teaching valuable lessons about the art of building toward the sky. But Khufu's vision is different, grander. Where others saw challenges, he saw possibilities. Where others built with millions of stones, he would build with over 2 million. Where others reached toward the heavens, he would create a monument so perfectly aligned with the stars that it would serve as a kind of earthly constellation, a bridge between the world of the living and the eternal realm of the gods. The decision wasn't made lightly. Building a pyramid of this scale would require the coordination of resources from across the kingdom. Limestone quarries would need to be opened. Granite would need to be transported from Aswan, hundreds of miles to the south. Copper tools would need to be forged by the thousands. And most importantly, a workforce unlike anything the world had ever seen would need to be assembled, housed, fed, and organized. But here's what's truly remarkable about this story, something that makes it perfect for our gentle journey tonight. The building of the Great Pyramid wasn't a frantic rush toward completion. It was a meditation in stone, a 27-year process that required patience, planning, and a deep understanding of the natural world that would make any modern engineer pause in admiration. The first challenge wasn't moving massive stones or creating perfect angles. It was something much more fundamental, understanding the ground itself. The builders needed to create a foundation so level, so precisely oriented, that a structure weighing over 6 million tons could rest upon it without shifting even a fraction of an inch over thousands of years. This is where the story becomes almost dreamlike in its attention to detail. The ancient engineers didn't have laser levels or satellite guidance. Instead, they used something far more elegant: water. Imagine them creating a series of shallow channels carved into the bedrock, filling them with water, and using the perfectly level surface as their guide. Water, after all, never lies about what is level and what is not. They worked by night as well as by day, using the stars as their compass. The pyramid's sides align almost perfectly with true north, achieving an accuracy that wouldn't be matched in European architecture for another 3,000 years. They watched Polaris, though it wasn't the pole star in their time. They tracked the movement of other circumpolar stars, using the ancient technique of the Indian circle to find true north with a precision that still astounds modern astronomers. But the foundation was only the beginning. Once they had their perfectly level, perfectly oriented platform, the real work could begin. And this is where our story takes on the rhythm of a great symphony, starting softly with the first movements of stone, building gradually toward a crescendo that would echo through eternity. The limestone came from quarries right there on the Giza plateau. You can still see them today, great stepped excavations that tell the story of how the pyramid literally rose from the earth around it. The workers used copper chisels, wooden wedges, and an intimate knowledge of how stone fractures and splits. They weren't fighting the stone, they were working with it, understanding its grain and its weaknesses, coaxing massive blocks from the living rock with a gentleness that might surprise you. Each block was different, unique in its own way, yet each one had to fit perfectly into the grand design. The limestone blocks that form the pyramid's core vary in size, but the average weight is about 2.5 tons. That's roughly the weight of a modern automobile. But imagine lifting and placing it with the precision of a watchmaker. And here's where the story becomes truly beautiful. The builders weren't just moving stone. They were creating a community. Archaeological evidence shows us that the workers lived in organized villages, complete with bakeries, breweries, and medical facilities. They were well fed, with a diet that included meat, bread, and beer. When they were injured, they received medical care. When they died, they were buried with honor near the great monument they had helped create. This wasn't a project driven by fear or oppression. It was a collective effort, a shared dream made manifest through the patient accumulation of individual contributions. Every stone that was quarried, every block that was shaped, every careful placement was an act of faith in a future these workers would never see, but which they were helping to create. The tools they used were simple but effective. Copper chisels that were resharpened constantly, wooden sledges for moving the blocks, ramps made of mud brick and stone chips, rope made from papyrus fibers, levers made from wooden beams. Nothing that couldn't be made by skilled craftsmen using materials that were readily available. But the genius lay not in the tools themselves, but in how they were used. The builders understood leverage, friction, and momentum in ways that allowed them to move massive weights with relatively small forces, applied consistently over time. They worked with gravity rather than against it, using the natural properties of inclined planes and mechanical advantage to achieve what seemed impossible. As the pyramid began to rise layer by layer, the challenges multiplied. Each new course of stones had to be lifted higher than the last. The ramps had to be extended and reinforced. The precision required became ever more demanding because any error at the bottom would be magnified exponentially as the structure grew taller. Yet they persevered, these ancient builders, with a patience that speaks to something deep in the human spirit. They understood that great things are not built quickly, but steadily. That perfection comes not from rushing toward a goal, but from the careful attention to each small step along the way. And as we'll discover in the next part of our journey, the techniques they developed, the problems they solved, and the innovations they created would influence architecture and engineering for thousands of years to come. But for now, as you rest in the gentle embrace of night, let yourself imagine those ancient workers returning to their villages after another day of patient labor, knowing that they were part of something greater than themselves. Tomorrow, we'll follow the stones as they rise higher, explore the ingenious ramp systems that made the impossible possible, and discover how a civilization without modern machinery created something so perfect, so enduring, that it continues to inspire wonder over 4 millennia later. But tonight, let the rhythm of their work carry you towards sleep. Stone upon stone, day after day, year after year, building something eternal through the simple act of never giving up, never losing sight of the dream, and never forgetting that the greatest achievements in human history have always been built one careful step at a time. Sweet dreams, and we'll continue our journey together soon. As dawn breaks over the construction site once again, you can almost feel the anticipation in the air. The workers stretch and prepare for another day of what would become humanity's most ambitious architectural meditation. By now, several years into the project, the pyramid has begun to take its recognizable shape, rising from the plateau like a geometric mountain, its limestone faces catching the first rays of sunlight. The sound that greets the morning is rhythmic, almost musical. The steady thunk of copper chisels against stone, the soft scraping of sledges being pulled across packed earth, the gentle splash of water being poured to reduce friction. There's no urgency here, no frantic rushing. Just the patient persistence of thousands of people who understand that they're part of something that will outlast empires. Let's follow one of these massive limestone blocks on its journey from quarry to pyramid. Picture it resting in the quarry pit, perhaps 20 feet below the surface, still connected to the bedrock that gave it birth. The quarrymen approach it like sculptors approaching a masterpiece, studying its grain, feeling for natural fracture lines, understanding exactly where to place their tools. They begin with careful precision, carving channels around the block's perimeter. The copper chisels, kept sharp through constant maintenance, bite into the limestone with surprising efficiency. This isn't the frantic chipping you might imagine, but rather a methodical process, almost meditative in its rhythm. Each strike is placed with purpose, each cut planned and executed with the patience of craftsmen who have elevated their work to an art form. Once the channels are complete, wooden wedges are driven into carefully placed slots. But here's where the ancient builders show their true genius. They don't force the stone to break. Instead, they wet the wooden wedges, allowing them to expand slowly, naturally, applying gentle but irresistible pressure. The stone yields gradually, separating along its natural grain lines with a soft crack that echoes through the quarry like a whisper of success. Now begins the block's journey to the pyramid itself. The workers slide wooden rollers beneath it, transforming the massive weight into something manageable. Teams of men, working in coordination that speaks to months of practice, begin the slow process of moving the stone. They chant as they work, not from exhaustion, but to maintain rhythm, to stay synchronized, to turn labor into something approaching dance. The path from quarry to pyramid is carefully prepared. The ground is leveled, moistened to reduce friction, and marked with guidelines that ensure each block travels the most efficient route. Along the way, water bearers move constantly, keeping the path damp, making sure the sledges glide as smoothly as possible across the desert floor. But here's what makes this journey truly remarkable. Every block is tracked, recorded, assigned to its specific place in the growing structure. The ancient builders maintained detailed records, written on papyrus, that tracked each stone from quarry to final placement. They knew exactly which block would go where, how it would fit with its neighbors, and what its role would be in the overall structural integrity of the monument. As the block approaches the pyramid, the real challenge begins. By this point in the construction, we're no longer placing stones at ground level. The pyramid has risen perhaps 50 or 60 feet into the air, and somehow this 2.5-ton block needs to be lifted to that height and placed with millimeter precision. This is where the ramp systems come into play, and oh, what ramp systems they were. The ancient builders didn't use just one ramp, but a sophisticated network of inclined planes that wrapped around and through the growing pyramid like a three-dimensional puzzle. Some ramps spiraled up the outside faces, others cut through the interior, and still others provided access to specific work areas. These weren't simple dirt piles, but engineered structures in their own right. The ramps were built with cores of stone and mud brick, surfaced with smooth limestone chips, and reinforced with wooden planking where necessary. They were designed to handle not just the weight of the stones, but the constant traffic of workers, sledges, and supply wagons moving up and down throughout the day. The gradient of each ramp was calculated with mathematical precision. Too steep, and the blocks couldn't be moved efficiently. Too shallow, and the ramps would stretch for miles across the desert. The builders found the perfect balance, creating inclines that allowed teams of workers to move massive weights steadily upward without exhausting themselves in the process. As our limestone block begins its ascent, pulled by teams of workers using ropes made from twisted papyrus fibers, you can almost feel the collective effort required. But it's not a struggle against impossible odds. It's a carefully choreographed dance of human cooperation, where every person knows their role, where every movement is planned and practiced, where the impossible becomes routine through the application of knowledge, patience, and shared purpose. The workers don't fight gravity, they work with it. They use wooden levers to adjust the block's position, copper wedges to secure it in place during rest stops, and their own body weight to provide the mechanical advantage needed to keep the stone moving upward. Rest breaks are scheduled and coordinated. Water is distributed regularly. The pace is sustainable, designed to continue not just for hours or days, but for the decades required to complete the monument. At each level of the pyramid, the block encounters a different world. The higher it rises, the more precisely it must be positioned. The tolerance for error decreases with every course of stones. What might be acceptable at the pyramid's base becomes unthinkable 50 feet up, where even a small misalignment could compromise the entire structure. But the builders are ready for this challenge. They've developed sophisticated measuring techniques using plumb lines, water levels, and geometric principles that allow them to maintain perfect alignment, even as the pyramid grows taller. They use the stars as reference points, checking their work against the unchanging patterns of the night sky. They measure and remeasure, constantly verifying that their work meets the exacting standards required. When our block finally reaches its designated position, the placement process begins. This isn't simply a matter of dropping it into place, but rather a careful process of adjustment and fine-tuning that can take hours to complete. The builders use wooden levers to make tiny adjustments, copper wedges to fill small gaps, and their own experienced eyes to ensure that everything aligns perfectly. The mortar they use is minimal, more of a lubricant than an adhesive. The blocks are cut so precisely that they fit together like pieces of a three-dimensional puzzle, relying on their own weight and the precision of their placement to create a structure that will stand for millennia. The joints between blocks are so tight that you can't slip a knife blade between them, a testament to the skill of the ancient stone cutters. As the block settles into its final position, becoming part of the growing pyramid, there's a moment of quiet satisfaction. Another piece of the dream has been realized. Another small step toward immortality has been taken. The workers step back, check their work one final time, and then move on to the next block, the next challenge, the next opportunity to participate in something greater than themselves. And this process repeats, day after day, season after season, year after year. Each block unique, yet each one contributing to a harmony so perfect that the finished pyramid would be oriented to true north within 3/60th of a degree. Each stone individual, yet each one part of a structure so precisely built that its base is level to within just 2.1 centimeters across its entire 230-meter width. The workers develop calluses on their hands and strength in their backs, but they also develop something more precious, a sense of purpose that transcends their individual lives. They're not just moving stones, they're participating in the creation of eternity. They're taking the ephemeral stuff of human dreams and transforming it into something that will outlast civilizations. As the sun sets on another day of construction, casting long shadows across the growing pyramid, the workers return to their villages with the quiet satisfaction of craftsmen who know they've done good work. Tomorrow will bring new challenges, new stones to be moved, new problems to be solved. But tonight, as they rest beside the Nile, they can look up at their monument and see progress, tangible and undeniable. The pyramid grows not through force or haste, but through the patient accumulation of human effort guided by wisdom, planning, and an unshakable belief in the possible. And as we'll discover next, the techniques they're developing, the problems they're solving, and the innovations they're creating will influence human achievement for thousands of years to come, proving that the greatest accomplishments arise not from rushing toward a goal, but from the steady, methodical pursuit of perfection, one stone at a time. The pyramid continues to grow, and with it, something remarkable begins to emerge. Not just a monument, but a revolution in human understanding. As the structure climbs toward the sky, each new course of stones presents challenges that have never been faced before, and in solving these challenges, the ancient builders are essentially writing the first textbooks of engineering, physics, and project management. Let's drift closer to one of the most ingenious aspects of the entire construction process: the internal chambers. Because the Great Pyramid isn't just a solid mass of stone, hidden within its heart are rooms and passages that required a level of planning so sophisticated it makes modern architects pause in admiration. The King's Chamber, the Queen's Chamber, the Grand Gallery, each one positioned with astronomical precision, each one requiring construction techniques that wouldn't be seen again for thousands of years. Imagine the challenge facing the builders as they work on the Grand Gallery. This isn't simply a corridor, but a soaring space nearly 30 feet high, with a corbelled ceiling that distributes weight so elegantly it could serve as a masterclass in structural engineering. The walls rise in perfectly calculated steps, each course of stones extending slightly inward from the one below, creating an arch without using a single keystone. The builders understand something profound about how stones want to behave under pressure. They're not forcing the architecture into unnatural shapes, but rather working with the inherent properties of limestone and granite to create spaces that feel almost alive. The Grand Gallery rises through the heart of the pyramid like a cathedral nave, its walls polished to mirror smoothness, its proportions designed to create acoustic properties that still mystify researchers today. But creating these internal spaces while building the pyramid around them requires a three-dimensional chess game of almost impossible complexity. Every block placement must account not just for the external shape of the pyramid, but for the hollow spaces within. Temporary supports must be positioned and then removed. Passageways must be kept open even as millions of tons of stone are stacked above them. The builders develop techniques for this that speak to their deep understanding of structural forces. They use granite beams weighing up to 70 tons as ceiling stones, transporting them from quarries 600 miles away at Aswan. These massive blocks must be floated down the Nile during flood season, when the river runs high enough to support specially designed barges. Picture those barges. Massive wooden vessels unlike anything else on the river. They're built specifically for this purpose, designed to carry single stones that weigh more than most modern houses. The journey from Aswan to Giza takes weeks, and every mile requires careful navigation, constant monitoring of the cargo, and the coordination of crews who understand that they're transporting pieces of eternity. When these granite giants arrive at Giza, they face perhaps the greatest challenge of all. Not only must they be moved from the river to the pyramid, but they must be lifted to their precise positions within the internal chambers, sometimes more than 100 feet above ground level. The logistics alone would challenge modern construction crews with cranes and hydraulic lifts. Yet the ancient builders accomplished this with wooden levers, rope pulleys, and an understanding of mechanical advantage that borders on the intuitive. They create lifting systems using multiple rope arrangements that multiply their pulling force. They build temporary wooden structures within the pyramid itself, creating frameworks that can support massive weights during the delicate positioning process. The precision required is breathtaking. The granite ceiling beams in the king's chamber must fit together so perfectly that the joints remain invisible 4,000 years later. Each beam weighs between 25 and 40 tons, yet they're positioned with tolerances measured in millimeters. A single mistake could compromise not just the chamber, but the structural integrity of the entire pyramid above it. As these massive stones are maneuvered into position, the builders work with a patience that seems almost supernatural by modern standards. There's no rushing, no cutting corners, no acceptance of good enough. Each granite beam is test-fitted multiple times, adjusted with wooden wedges and copper shims, and positioned with the care of a jeweler setting precious stones. The mortar joints between the granite blocks are so thin they're barely visible, filled with a mixture that includes powdered granite dust to ensure perfect color matching. The surfaces are polished to mirror brightness using progressively finer abrasives, from coarse sand to powdered quartz, applied with wooden tools and endless patience. But perhaps the most remarkable aspect of the internal construction is how the builders maintain structural integrity while creating these hollow spaces. The weight of the pyramid above the chambers is enormous, millions of tons pressing downward with relentless force. Yet the chambers remain perfectly intact, their walls straight, their ceilings level, their corners true. This is achieved through a sophisticated understanding of load distribution that wouldn't be formalized in engineering textbooks for another 3 millennia. The builders intuitively grasp how forces flow through stone structures, how weight can be redirected and dispersed, how to create spaces of emptiness within solid mass without compromising strength. Above the king's chamber, they construct a series of relieving chambers, empty spaces designed to redirect the enormous weight of the pyramid away from the ceiling below. These chambers are invisible from within the king's chamber, hidden architectural features that demonstrate the builder's deep understanding of structural engineering principles. The relieving chambers are connected by narrow passages that allow air to circulate, preventing the buildup of pressure that could crack the granite beams below. Even the ventilation system is engineered with precision, with shafts that run from the internal chambers to the outside faces of the pyramid, maintaining air quality within the sealed spaces. As the pyramid continues to rise, the external facing stones begin to tell their own story of precision and beauty. These aren't the rough limestone blocks of the internal structure, but carefully selected and shaped casing stones that will give the finished pyramid its smooth, polished appearance. Each casing stone is cut to exact specifications, with angles calculated to create the pyramid's perfect slope of 51 degrees and 52 minutes. The casing stones fit together like pieces of a massive three-dimensional puzzle, each one shaped to complement its neighbors perfectly. The joints between them are filled with mortar so thin it's almost invisible, creating an exterior surface so smooth that ancient historians described it as appearing to be carved from a single, impossibly large stone. The limestone selected for the casing comes from the finest quarries at Tura, across the Nile from Giza. This limestone is different from the coarser stone used for the pyramid's core, finer grained, whiter, capable of taking a polish that would make the finished pyramid gleam like a beacon across the desert landscape. Each casing stone must be transported across the Nile, a journey that requires its own specialized boats and careful timing with the river's seasonal floods. The stones are loaded onto barges during the annual inundation, when the Nile runs high and wide, bringing the quarry boats almost to the edge of the construction site. The fitting of the casing stones requires perhaps the highest level of skill of any aspect of the construction. Each stone must be shaped not just to fit its immediate neighbors, but to contribute to the overall geometric perfection of the pyramid's faces. The ancient stone cutters developed techniques for achieving this precision that won't be equaled in European architecture for thousands of years. They use wooden templates and copper measuring tools to ensure that each stone is cut to exactly the right dimensions. They employ water levels and plumb lines to verify angles and alignments. They test fit each stone multiple times before final placement, making tiny adjustments with copper chisels until the fit is absolutely perfect. The workers who specialize in casing stone placements develop an almost mystical understanding of geometric relationships. They can look at a rough cut block and visualize exactly how it needs to be shaped to fit into the pyramid's growing surface. Their hands seem to know intuitively where each cut should be made, how much material needs to be removed, what angle will create the perfect joint. As each casing stone finds its place, the pyramid's faces begin to take on their final appearance. The rough, stepped appearance of the construction phase gradually gives way to smooth, gleaming surfaces that catch and reflect sunlight like mirrors. From a distance, the growing pyramid begins to look less like a construction site and more like a geometric mountain crafted by gods. The visual effect is stunning, even in its incomplete state. The polished limestone faces create an interplay of light and shadow that changes throughout the day, making the pyramid appear to shift and breathe with the movement of the sun. At dawn, the eastern face glows like gold. At sunset, the western face seems to burn with inner fire. But the casing stones serve more than an aesthetic purpose. They're also the pyramid's protective skin, designed to shed water and resist the erosive effects of wind and sand. The joints between stones are angled to direct rainwater away from the structure's interior. The smooth surfaces offer no purchase for wind-blown sand, allowing the desert storms to slide harmlessly past. The builders understand that they're creating something meant to last forever, and every detail of the construction reflects this intention. Nothing is temporary, nothing is makeshift, nothing is good enough. Every element is designed and executed with the assumption that it will need to function perfectly for thousands of years. As the pyramid approaches its final height, the challenges become even more complex. The apex, the pyramidion that will crown the entire structure, must be positioned with absolute precision. This isn't simply a matter of placing the last stone, but of bringing the entire monument to its perfect geometric conclusion. The pyramidion itself is a work of art, carved from a single block of fine limestone or possibly granite, polished to mirror brightness, perhaps even capped with gold or electrum to catch the first and last rays of sunlight each day. Its placement will mark not just the completion of the pyramid, but the achievement of humanity's most ambitious architectural dream. Yet even as the end approaches, the builders maintain their patient, methodical pace. There's no rushing toward completion, no cutting corners in the final stages. If anything, the work becomes even more precise, even more careful, as if the builders understand that the pyramid's perfection will be judged not by its massive scale, but by the precision of its smallest details. And as we'll discover in our next gentle exploration, the completion of the Great Pyramid marks not an ending, but a beginning. The techniques developed, the knowledge gained, and the human potential revealed during its construction will echo through history, influencing architecture, engineering, and human achievement for millennia to come. But for now, as you rest in the peaceful embrace of night, let yourself imagine those ancient builders, still patient, still precise, still devoted to their impossible dream, adding stone upon stone toward a vision that will outlast empires and inspire wonder until the end of time. And now, as the pyramid nears its final courses, something extraordinary begins to happen. The workers, who have spent years perfecting their craft, start to move with an almost supernatural precision. Every gesture is economical, every movement purposeful. They've become extensions of the stone itself, understanding its weight, its balance, its desire to find its perfect place in the eternal puzzle. The final stages require a different kind of courage. Working at heights that would challenge modern construction crews, the ancient builders continue their patient dance with gravity and geometry. The ramps have grown into architectural marvels themselves, spiraling around the pyramid like stone serpents, their surfaces worn smooth by countless feet and countless sledges carrying their precious cargo toward the sky. But here's what makes these final moments truly breathtaking. The builders aren't simply trying to finish, they're trying to perfect. Each of the remaining stones receives the same meticulous attention as the very first block placed on the foundation years earlier. The tolerances become even tighter, the measurements even more precise, because they understand that the pyramid's apex will be visible from every angle, scrutinized by every eye that looks upon their creation. The capstone, the pyramidion that will crown their achievement, waits in a place of honor near the construction site. It's been carved and polished over months, perhaps years, shaped from a single piece of the finest stone available. Some evidence suggests it may have been covered in electrum, a naturally occurring alloy of gold and silver that would have made the pyramid's peak flash like a beacon across the desert landscape. Picture the moment when this final stone begins its journey upward. Unlike the millions of blocks that have preceded it, this one travels alone, attended by the most skilled workers, guided by the master builders themselves. The entire construction site falls into a reverent quiet as the capstone makes its slow ascent up the ramps that have served so faithfully for nearly 3 decades. The precision required for this final placement is almost beyond comprehension. The capstone must align perfectly with the pyramid's geometry, completing angles that have been maintained with mathematical perfection throughout the entire construction process. A single degree of error, a few centimeters of misalignment, and the imperfection would be visible for eternity. Yet the builders approach this moment with the same patient confidence they've displayed throughout the entire project. They've prepared for this day for years, calculating every angle, measuring every dimension, ensuring that when the moment comes, the capstone will settle into place as naturally as water finding its level. The ropes are checked and double-checked. The wooden supports are positioned with surgical precision. The master builders confer in quiet voices, their hands tracing invisible lines in the air as they visualize the final placement one more time. There's no urgency here, no rush toward completion, just the quiet satisfaction of craftsmen who know their work has been perfect from the very beginning. As the capstone rises toward its final position, you can almost feel the collective breath of thousands of workers held in anticipation. This isn't just the completion of a construction project. It's the culmination of a shared dream that has sustained an entire civilization for a generation. Children who were born when the foundation was laid are now adults with children of their own, all of them part of this extraordinary achievement. The final positioning takes hours. The capstone is lowered carefully into place, adjusted with wooden levers, checked against plumb lines and water levels, moved fractionally this way and that until it sits in perfect harmony with the structure beneath it. When the last adjustment is made, when the final measurement confirms perfection, a sound rises from the thousands of workers gathered below. Not a cheer of victory, but something deeper. A sigh of completion, a whisper of satisfaction, a recognition that they have accomplished something that will outlast them all. But even with the capstone in place, the work isn't finished. The casing stones still need their final polish, the joints their final inspection, the entire surface its ultimate perfection. The builders continue with the same methodical patience they've shown from the beginning, understanding that true completion means attention to every detail, no matter how small. The polishing of the casing stones is perhaps the most meditative part of the entire process. Workers move across the pyramid's faces with stone and sand, smoothing away any imperfection, creating surfaces so reflective they seem to glow from within. The work is repetitive, almost hypnotic, the kind of labor that allows the mind to wander while the hands perform their familiar dance. As each section of casing receives its final polish, the pyramid's true magnificence begins to reveal itself. The limestone faces gleam like mirrors, creating an interplay of light and shadow that changes throughout the day. In the morning, the eastern face catches fire with the rising sun. At midday, all four faces blaze with reflected light. In the evening, the western face glows like burnished gold as the sun sets behind the desert horizon. The visual effect is so stunning that it can be seen from miles away. Travelers approaching the Giza Plateau speak of seeing a geometric mountain of light rising from the desert, its perfect angles seeming to defy the natural chaos of wind-carved stone and shifting sand. The pyramid doesn't simply occupy the landscape, it transforms it, becoming a focal point around which the entire world seems to organize itself. But the builders understand that their creation serves purposes beyond the merely visual. The pyramid's internal passages and chambers have been aligned with astronomical precision, creating a structure that functions as both tomb and temple, earthly monument and celestial instrument. The king's chamber contains a granite sarcophagus carved from a single block of stone, positioned at the exact geometric center of the pyramid's mass. The passages leading to this chamber have been calculated to align with specific stars and constellations, creating a kind of stone calendar that tracks the movement of the heavens across the years. The ancient builders understood something profound about the relationship between earthly architecture and cosmic order, and they've embedded this understanding into every angle and dimension of their creation. The grand gallery, that soaring internal corridor we explored earlier, serves not just as a passageway, but as an acoustic chamber designed to amplify and focus sound in ways that still mystify researchers today. A whisper at one end carries clearly to the other. A chant or prayer spoken within its walls creates harmonic resonances that seem to make the entire pyramid vibrate sympathetically. Even the pyramid's external proportions encode mathematical relationships that wouldn't be formally discovered by European scholars for thousands of years. The ratio of the pyramid's height to its base perimeter equals the ratio of a circle's radius to its circumference, encoding the value of pi into the monument's very geometry. Whether this was intentional or intuitive, it demonstrates a mathematical sophistication that challenges our assumptions about ancient knowledge. As the final details are completed, as the last joints are sealed and the last surfaces polished, the pyramid stands revealed in all its impossible perfection. It rises 481 feet into the desert sky, its base covering more than 13 acres, its mass exceeding 6 million tons. Yet for all its enormous scale, it's the precision of its construction that truly takes the breath away. The base is leveled to within less than an inch across its entire 755-foot width. The sides align with true north to within 3/60ths of a degree. The four faces meet at the apex with geometric perfection that modern instruments can barely measure. It's not just large, it's accurate to a degree that seems almost supernatural given the tools and techniques available to its builders. But perhaps the most remarkable aspect of the completed pyramid is how natural it appears in its setting. Despite its geometric perfection, despite its obvious artificiality, it seems to belong on the Giza plateau as if it had grown there over geological time. The proportions are so harmonious, the angles so pleasing to the eye, that the massive structure achieves a kind of visual weightlessness, appearing to float above the desert like a vision made manifest. The workers, who have devoted years of their lives to this achievement, gather in the pyramid's shadow as the final touches are completed. There's a quality of quiet satisfaction in their faces, the look of craftsmen who know they've done something extraordinary. They've taken the ephemeral stuff of human dreams and transformed it into something that will outlast civilizations. Many of these workers will never see the pyramid's interior. The passages and chambers are sealed as soon as the construction is complete, hidden away from human eyes for millennia to come. Yet, they've all participated in creating something greater than its visible exterior. They've built not just a monument, but a mystery, a question in stone that will challenge and inspire humanity for thousands of years. As the sun sets on the completed pyramid, its polished faces catch and hold the last light of day, glowing with an inner fire that seems almost alive. The geometric perfection of its angles creates shadows that shift and dance across the desert floor, marking the passage of time with sundial precision. The ancient builders begin to pack their tools, to dismantle the ramps that have served so faithfully, to prepare for their return to homes and families across the kingdom. Some will go on to build other monuments, carrying with them the knowledge and techniques developed during the pyramid's construction. Others will return to their farms and workshops, their hands forever changed by the experience of shaping eternity. But the pyramid itself will remain, patient and eternal, a testament to what human beings can accomplish when they combine vision with persistence, knowledge with craft, individual skill with collective purpose. It will stand through the rise and fall of empires, through invasions and conquests, through the forgetting and rediscovering of the civilization that created it. And as you drift towards sleep tonight, let yourself imagine those ancient builders walking away from their completed masterpiece, their shadows long in the setting sun, their hearts full of the quiet satisfaction that comes from work well done. They've built something that will outlast them by millennia, something that will continue to inspire wonder and awe long after their names are forgotten. The Great Pyramid stands complete, a meditation in stone, a prayer made visible, a dream transformed into reality through nothing more mysterious than human patience, skill, and an unshakable belief in the possible. Tomorrow, we'll explore what happened next, how this achievement influenced the world, and why it continues to captivate us 4,000 years later. But tonight, rest in the knowledge that the greatest human accomplishments arise not from magic or mystery, but from the steady application of wisdom, craft, and love, one careful stone at a time. And now, as you settle deeper into the gentle embrace of rest, let's drift forward through time, beyond the moment of completion, into the centuries that followed. Because the story of the Great Pyramid doesn't end with its final stone. In many ways, that perfect capstone marked not a conclusion, but a beginning. Picture the pyramid in its first decades of existence, when its polished limestone faces still gleamed like mirrors across the desert. The structure wasn't simply a monument to be admired from afar. It was a living part of a complex that buzzed with activity, purpose, and reverence. The pyramid stood at the center of an entire sacred city, surrounded by smaller pyramids for queens, mastaba tombs for nobles, temples for ritual ceremonies, and causeways that connected the monument to the Nile's edge. Priests moved through this complex daily, maintaining the rituals that were believed to ensure the pharaoh's successful journey through the afterlife. The pyramid wasn't just Khufu's tomb. It was his eternal palace, his launching point into the realm of the gods. Every dawn brought ceremonies to greet the rising sun. Every sunset brought prayers to guide the solar bark through the underworld of night. The knowledge gained during the pyramid's construction didn't simply disappear with its completion. Instead, it spread like ripples across the ancient world, influencing architecture and engineering in ways we're still discovering today. The master builders, who had spent decades perfecting their craft, took their expertise to new projects, new challenges, new monuments that would carry forward the lessons learned on the Giza plateau. Within Egypt itself, the techniques developed for the Great Pyramid influenced every major construction project for centuries to come. The precision of stone cutting, the understanding of structural forces, the methods for moving massive weights, all of these innovations became part of Egypt's architectural DNA. Later pyramids might be smaller in scale, but they incorporated refinements and improvements that built upon the foundation of knowledge created at Giza. But the influence spread far beyond Egypt's borders. Trade routes carried not just goods, but ideas. Merchants, diplomats, and scholars who visited Egypt returned to their homelands with stories of impossible achievements, of stones fitted so perfectly that knife blades couldn't slip between them, of monuments that seemed to defy the very laws of physics. These stories planted seeds in distant minds, inspiring architects and engineers across the ancient world to push the boundaries of what was possible. The megalithic structures of Malta, the massive stones of Stonehenge, the precisely fitted walls of Sacsayhuaman in Peru. All of these achievements echo with techniques and understanding that may have originated on the dusty plateau of Giza. Even the tools developed for the pyramid's construction found their way into the broader world. The copper alloys perfected by Egyptian metalworkers influenced tool-making across the Mediterranean. The wooden machines used for lifting and moving massive stones became the ancestors of cranes and pulleys that would serve construction projects for millennia to come. But perhaps the most profound influence of the Great Pyramid was psychological. It proved that human beings could achieve the impossible through patience, planning, and collective effort. It demonstrated that the grandest visions could be made manifest through the accumulation of small, precise actions repeated over time. This lesson resonated across cultures and centuries, inspiring ambitious projects that might never have been attempted without the pyramid's example. Let's drift closer to one particular aspect of this influence, something that bridges the ancient world with our modern understanding. The mathematical principles embedded in the pyramid's design didn't remain hidden in stone. They were discovered, studied, and incorporated into the growing body of human knowledge about geometry, proportion, and the fundamental relationships that govern our physical world. Ancient Greek scholars who visited Egypt were astounded by the mathematical sophistication they encountered. They returned home with geometric insights that would influence Greek mathematics for centuries. The relationship between the pyramid's height and base, encoding the value of pi, inspired investigations into the nature of circles and curves. The precise angles of the pyramid's faces led to deeper understanding of triangular relationships that would eventually evolve into trigonometry. The golden ratio, that mystical proportion that appears throughout nature and art, seems to whisper through the pyramid's dimensions. Whether consciously incorporated by the builders or discovered through their intuitive understanding of harmonious proportion, these mathematical relationships inspired generations of architects, artists, and mathematicians to seek the hidden patterns that give beauty its power to move the human heart. Roman engineers, inheriting the mathematical insights passed down from Egypt through Greece, applied these principles to their own monumental projects. The precise arches of Roman aqueducts, the perfectly proportioned spaces of the Pantheon, the engineering marvels that allowed Roman civilization to span continents, all of these achievements rest upon foundations of knowledge that can be traced back to those patient builders on the Giza plateau. The influence flowed through time like an underground river, sometimes visible, sometimes hidden, but always present. Medieval cathedral builders, seeking to create spaces that would lift the human spirit toward heaven, unconsciously echoed techniques first developed for the pyramid. The precise stone cutting, the understanding of how weight flows through architectural structures, the patience required to build something meant to last forever. All of these elements found new expression in the soaring spaces of Gothic architecture. Renaissance architects like Brunelleschi, wrestling with the challenge of spanning impossible spaces with stone and mathematics, drew inspiration from ancient achievements that proved such things were possible. The dome of Florence Cathedral, rising majestically above the city like a stone prayer made visible, owes its existence partly to the confidence born from knowing that earlier builders had achieved the impossible through nothing more than human skill and determination. Even in our modern age, as we've developed steel and concrete, cranes and computers, the Great Pyramid continues to influence our understanding of what's possible. Contemporary architects study its proportions, engineers analyze its structural principles, and construction managers marvel at the organizational complexity required to coordinate such a massive undertaking using only human power and ancient tools. But the pyramid's influence extends beyond the merely technical. It continues to shape our understanding of human potential, reminding us that the greatest achievements come not from rushing toward goals, but from the patient application of skill, knowledge, and collective effort over time. In our age of instant gratification and rapid change, the pyramid stands as a monument to the power of persistence, the value of craftsmanship, and the beauty that emerges when human beings commit themselves fully to a shared vision. The workers who built the pyramid couldn't have imagined that their achievement would still be inspiring wonder 4,000 years later. They couldn't have foreseen that their techniques would influence architecture on continents they never knew existed. They couldn't have predicted that their monument would become a symbol of human potential recognized around the world. Yet perhaps that's exactly why their achievement continues to resonate so powerfully. They weren't building for fame or recognition. They were building because they believed in something greater than themselves, something worth the dedication of their lives, something that justified the careful placement of millions of stones, one by one, day after day, year after year. The pyramid stands today as proof that the most enduring human achievements arise not from individual genius, but from collective dedication. Not from technological superiority, but from the patient application of knowledge and skill. Not from conquering nature, but from working in harmony with the fundamental laws that govern our physical world. As you rest tonight, let yourself feel connected to those ancient builders, to their patience, their skill, their unwavering commitment to perfection. Let their example remind you that the greatest accomplishments in your own life will likely come not from dramatic gestures or sudden breakthroughs, but from the steady accumulation of small, well-executed efforts over time. The techniques they developed, the problems they solved, the innovations they created continue to influence our world in ways both visible and hidden. Every time an engineer calculates load-bearing capacity, every time an architect designs proportions that please the eye, every time a construction crew coordinates complex logistics, they're drawing upon knowledge that first crystallized on the Giza plateau over 4 millennia ago. The pyramid's influence flows through time like the Nile itself, sometimes obvious, sometimes subtle, but always present. It reminds us that human achievements, like rivers, grow stronger as they gather tributaries, as knowledge builds upon knowledge, as each generation adds its own insights to the accumulated wisdom of those who came before. And just as the pyramid influenced the achievements that followed it, those later accomplishments have helped us understand the pyramid itself more deeply. Modern engineering analysis has revealed the sophistication of ancient techniques that seemed impossibly primitive. Computer modeling has shown us the elegant efficiency of construction methods that appeared crude to earlier observers. Scientific investigation has uncovered layers of meaning and purpose that continue to surprise even seasoned researchers. The pyramid has become a teacher that reveals new lessons as our ability to understand grows more sophisticated. Each generation discovers something new in its perfect stones, some previously hidden aspect of its design, some overlooked element of its construction that speaks to the depth of ancient knowledge and the timeless principles of human achievement. Tonight, as you drift towards sleep, let yourself imagine the pyramid as it stands now in the desert darkness, its ancient stones still fitted with impossible precision, its geometric perfection still challenging our understanding of what's possible. 4,000 years have passed since its completion. Empires have risen and fallen. Technologies have emerged and vanished. Yet the pyramid endures, patient and eternal, a testament to the power of human vision made manifest through careful, persistent effort. The influence continues to spread, rippling through time like circles on water, touching lives and inspiring achievements in ways the original builders could never have imagined. And perhaps that's the most beautiful part of their legacy, that their patient dedication to perfection created something that continues to give, continues to teach, continues to inspire, long after their names have been forgotten and their individual stories have dissolved into the vast silence of time. The Great Pyramid stands as proof that when human beings commit themselves fully to a worthy vision, when they combine knowledge with craft, patience with persistence, individual skill with collective purpose, they can create something that transcends the limitations of their age and speaks directly to the eternal aspects of human potential. And that influence, like the monument itself, will endure as long as human beings continue to dream of achieving the impossible, one careful step at a time. The pyramid story doesn't end with its stones, though. As centuries passed, the monument became something more than its builders ever intended. It became a bridge across time, carrying whispers of ancient wisdom into ages yet unborn. Let's drift gently through these later chapters, watching as the pyramid's influence spreads like seeds on the desert wind, taking root in minds and cultures far removed from the Nile's fertile banks. Picture the pyramid during Egypt's Golden Age, when pharaohs from distant dynasties would journey to Giza to pay homage to their ancient predecessors' achievement. They came not just as rulers, but as pilgrims, seeking to understand how such perfection had been achieved. These royal visitors commissioned their own monuments, but always with the Great Pyramid as their standard, their impossible ideal. The pyramid became Egypt's calling card to the world. Foreign ambassadors arriving at Memphis would be taken to Giza as proof of Egyptian power and sophistication. They would return home with tales that seemed to stretch the bounds of possibility. A mountain of stone, they would tell their kings, built by human hands to tolerances that challenged the very concept of perfection. But it was the scholars who truly carried the pyramid's influence into the wider world. Ancient Greek historians like Herodotus made pilgrimages to Egypt, drawn by stories of impossible achievements. They interviewed priests, examined the construction, measured what they could reach, and carried home detailed accounts that would fascinate European minds for centuries to come. Herodotus wrote of the pyramid with something approaching reverence, describing not just its physical dimensions, but the human organization required for its creation. He spoke of the 100,000 workers laboring in shifts, of the radishes, onions, and garlic that fed them, of the silver spent on their provisions. But beneath the statistics, you can sense his wonder at a civilization capable of such sustained collective effort. These Greek accounts planted seeds that would bloom in unexpected places. Roman architects, reading Herodotus centuries later, began to envision their own impossible projects. The Pantheon's soaring dome, the vast spaces of the baths of Caracalla, the engineering marvels that would span the Mediterranean world, all drew inspiration from proof that massive scale and perfect precision could coexist in human achievement. The mathematical insights embedded in the pyramid's design traveled even further than its architectural influence. Greek geometers, studying the proportions they found at Giza, began to formalize principles that had been intuitive to the Egyptian builders. The relationships between height and base, the angles that created such pleasing proportions, the mysterious appearance of pi in the monument's dimensions, all of these discoveries fed into the growing body of mathematical knowledge. Pythagoras himself may have studied in Egypt, absorbing insights that would later crystallize into the theorem that bears his name. The golden ratio, that divine proportion that seems to govern beauty in both nature and art, whispers through the pyramid's measurements like an ancient secret waiting to be decoded. Whether the builders consciously incorporated these relationships or discovered them through their intuitive understanding of harmony, their monument became a textbook in stone for future mathematicians. As the centuries passed, the pyramid's influence grew more subtle, but no less profound. Islamic scholars, during the golden age of Baghdad and Cordoba, studied ancient texts that preserved Egyptian knowledge. They refined mathematical techniques, improved construction methods, and developed engineering principles that built upon foundations laid at Giza. The soaring arches of Islamic architecture, the precise calculations required for complex geometric patterns, the sophisticated understanding of structural forces, all of these achievements traced lineages back to those patient builders on the desert plateau. Medieval European scholars, rediscovering classical texts through Arabic translations, encountered descriptions of the pyramid that seemed to challenge everything they thought they knew about ancient capabilities. How could people without modern tools achieve such precision? How could ancient minds conceive such ambitious projects? The pyramid became a puzzle that drove intellectual curiosity, encouraging scholars to question assumptions about progress, technology, and human potential. Cathedral builders, pushing stone and mathematics to their limits in pursuit of spaces that would lift the human spirit toward heaven, unconsciously echoed techniques first developed for the pyramid. The precise cutting of massive stones, the understanding of how weight flows through architectural structures, the patience required to build something meant to last forever. All of these elements found new expression in Gothic architecture. The master masons who directed these cathedral projects carried knowledge that had been passed down through generations, skills that ultimately traced back to those ancient Egyptian workshops where craftsmen first learned to read stone like a language, to understand its grain and its breaking points, to coax impossible precision from copper tools and patient hands. Renaissance architects, like Brunelleschi, wrestling with challenges that seemed to defy solution, drew courage from knowing that earlier builders had achieved the impossible. When faced with spanning the impossible space of Florence Cathedral's dome, Brunelleschi studied ancient techniques, seeking inspiration in achievements that proved such things were possible. The dome that rose above Florence like a stone prayer, made visible, owed its existence partly to confidence born from ancient precedent, but the pyramid's influence extended beyond architecture and mathematics into the realm of human psychology and project management. The monument stood as proof that the most ambitious visions could be realized through the patient coordination of countless individual efforts. It demonstrated that perfection emerged not from rushing toward goals, but from the careful attention to each small step along the way. This lesson resonated across cultures and centuries, inspiring ambitious projects that might never have been attempted without the pyramid's example. The Great Wall of China, stretching like a stone dragon across impossible terrain, echoed the pyramid's demonstration that human persistence could reshape landscapes. The Roman road system, spanning continents with engineering precision, built upon organizational principles first developed for moving millions of stones across the Egyptian desert. Even the techniques for managing massive workforces, for coordinating complex logistics, for maintaining quality control across decades-long projects, all of these innovations that emerged during the pyramid's construction became part of humanity's toolkit for achieving the impossible. Every major construction project since has drawn upon insights first crystallized on the Giza Plateau, from the building of Versailles to the construction of modern skyscrapers. The pyramid became more than a monument. It became a teacher whose lessons grew clearer as human understanding grew more sophisticated. Each generation discovered new layers of meaning in its perfect stones, new aspects of its design that spoke to principles they were only beginning to understand. Medieval scholars saw in it proof of divine proportion, evidence that God's hand guided human achievement. Renaissance thinkers found mathematical relationships that supported their growing understanding of natural law. Enlightenment philosophers used it as an example of what human reason could accomplish when properly applied. Romantic poets saw in it a symbol of humanity's eternal struggle to transcend mortality through art and achievement. Industrial age engineers studied its construction techniques, seeking insights that could be applied to their own unprecedented projects. The bridges that spanned impossible rivers, the tunnels that burrowed through mountain ranges, the railways that connected continents, all drew inspiration from proof that patient human effort could overcome any obstacle. Modern architects continue to study the pyramid's proportions, seeking to understand why its geometry pleases the human eye so profoundly. Computer analysis has revealed mathematical relationships so subtle that the builders may not have been consciously aware of them, suggesting an intuitive understanding of harmony that transcended formal mathematical knowledge. The pyramid has become a mirror in which each age sees its own possibilities and limitations reflected. It challenges our assumptions about ancient capabilities while inspiring us to reach beyond what seems possible. It reminds us that the greatest achievements come not from technological superiority, but from the patient application of wisdom, skill, and collective dedication. As you rest tonight, let yourself feel connected to this great chain of human achievement, stretching from those ancient builders to the dreamers and creators of today. The techniques they developed, the problems they solved, the vision they realized continue to influence every ambitious project, every attempt to build something lasting, every effort to transform vision into reality. The pyramid's influence flows through time like an underground river, sometimes visible, sometimes hidden, but always present. It carries within it the accumulated wisdom of generations, the hard-won knowledge of what's possible when human beings commit themselves fully to a worthy goal. And that river continues to flow, carrying inspiration forward into ages yet unborn, proving that the greatest human achievements transcend their own time to become eternal sources of wonder, wisdom, and hope. Tonight, as ancient starlight falls upon stones cut with impossible precision, the pyramid continues its patient vigil, teaching its quiet lessons to any who have eyes to see and hearts to understand. Its influence spreads outward still, touching lives and inspiring achievements in ways its builders could never have imagined, yet would surely recognize as expressions of the same human spirit that drove them to attempt the impossible, one carefully placed stone at a time. And so the pyramid stands today, weathered but unbroken, its casing stones long since carried away by later builders who saw in those perfect blocks the raw materials for their own lesser monuments. Yet even stripped of its original polished glory, the Great Pyramid continues to reveal secrets, to pose questions, to challenge our understanding of what our ancestors achieved in that distant age, when the world was young and human ambition knew no bounds. Modern archaeologists approach the monument with tools the ancient builders could never have imagined. Ground-penetrating radar reveals hidden chambers. Laser scanning creates digital maps accurate to the millimeter. Robotic explorers creep through narrow shafts that haven't felt human breath for 4,000 years. Yet with each new discovery, each technological revelation, the pyramid's mysteries seem to deepen rather than resolve. Recent explorations have revealed voids within the pyramid's mass, empty spaces that don't appear on any ancient blueprint, chambers that may have been sealed since the moment of construction. These discoveries don't diminish the builder's achievement. They amplify it, suggesting layers of complexity and purpose that we're only beginning to understand. Picture the moment when modern instruments detected these hidden chambers. Scientists gathered around computer screens, staring at ghostly images that revealed empty spaces within solid stone. The pyramid, after 4 millennia, was still teaching, still surprising, still demonstrating that its builders understood things we've forgotten how to know. These new chambers raise questions that echo through the corridors of archaeological speculation. Were they intentional voids, designed to relieve stress on the structure below? Were they storage spaces for treasures we haven't imagined? Were they symbolic chambers, representing aspects of ancient cosmology that we've lost the ability to decode? Or were they simply the result of construction techniques so sophisticated that they created complexities we're only now sophisticated enough to detect? The tools used to make these discoveries represent the culmination of centuries of technological development. Yet they serve to highlight the extraordinary achievements of builders who worked with nothing more than copper, wood, and stone. Modern engineers, armed with computer modeling and stress analysis software, study the pyramid's structure with growing admiration for the intuitive understanding of forces and materials that guided its construction. Each measurement taken with laser precision confirms what the ancient builders achieved through careful observation and patient craft. The base remains level to within centimeters across its vast expanse. The angles maintain their perfection despite 4,000 years of earthquakes, erosion, and human interference. The internal passages align with astronomical phenomena with an accuracy that modern instruments can barely improve upon. But perhaps the most remarkable discovery isn't technological at all. It's the growing realization that the pyramid was built by people not so different from ourselves. Recent archaeological work in the workers' villages has revealed a community of human beings with hopes, dreams, injuries, and daily concerns that would be recognizable to anyone living today. These weren't superhuman giants or mysterious ancient aliens. They were bakers and brewers, stonecutters and rope makers, supervisors and laborers, people who got up each morning and went to work on the most ambitious project their world had ever seen. They suffered from arthritis and broken bones. They told jokes and sang songs. They fell in love and raised families. They worried about their children and honored their dead. Yet somehow, these ordinary human beings achieved something extraordinary. They transformed a shared vision into physical reality through nothing more mysterious than knowledge, skill, patience, and collective determination. They proved that the greatest human achievements arise not from individual genius or supernatural intervention, but from the power of organized human effort, guided by wisdom and sustained by purpose. The pyramid's enduring influence on human achievement becomes even more remarkable when we consider how its lessons have been rediscovered and reapplied across cultures and centuries. The precision of Japanese temple joinery, where massive wooden beams fit together without nails or fasteners, echoes the stone-fitting techniques perfected at Giza. The organizational methods used to coordinate modern space missions trace lineages back to the project management innovations developed for moving millions of blocks across the Egyptian desert. Even our understanding of quality control, of maintaining standards across massive undertakings, builds upon principles first established by those ancient builders who understood that perfection emerges from attention to countless small details. Every stone had to meet exacting standards. Every measurement had to be verified. Every placement had to contribute to the overall geometric perfection that would define the finished monument. The pyramid teaches us that there are no shortcuts to lasting achievement. The builders could have settled for good enough at any point during the construction. They could have accepted slightly looser tolerances, somewhat rougher finishes, marginally less precise alignments. The monument would still have been impressive, still have endured, still have inspired wonder, but they didn't settle. They maintained their exacting standards from foundation to capstone, understanding that true greatness lies not in the achievement of minimum requirements, but in the pursuit of perfection for its own sake. This lesson resonates across every field of human endeavor, from the scientist seeking truth to the artist pursuing beauty, to the craftsman creating objects that will outlast their maker. The pyramid stands as a monument to the power of delayed gratification, of working toward goals that extend far beyond individual lifetimes. The workers who laid the foundation stones never lived to see the capstone placed. The master builders who conceived the project passed their knowledge to successors who would complete what they had begun. It was an intergenerational effort, a covenant between past and future that transcended the limitations of any single human lifespan. This long-term thinking, this willingness to work toward goals that extend beyond immediate reward, represents perhaps the pyramid's most important lesson for our modern age. In a time of instant communication and rapid change, the monument reminds us that the most worthwhile achievements often require sustained effort over extended periods, that true excellence emerges not from rushing toward goals, but from the patient accumulation of incremental improvements. The mathematical relationships embedded in the pyramid's design continue to fascinate researchers, not because they represent impossible knowledge, but because they demonstrate how deep understanding can arise from careful observation of natural patterns. The builders didn't need textbooks on trigonometry or calculus. They had something perhaps more valuable: direct, intimate knowledge of how materials behave, how forces flow through structures, how geometric relationships create harmony and strength. This intuitive understanding, developed through generations of practical experience, allowed them to incorporate mathematical principles into their design without necessarily being able to express those principles in formal equations. They understood pi not as an abstract mathematical concept, but as a relationship they could see in circles and feel in the rhythms of measurement and proportion. Their achievement challenges our modern tendency to separate theoretical knowledge from practical application, to value abstract understanding over hands-on experience. The pyramid builders were simultaneously theorists and practitioners, thinkers and makers, scientists and artists. They understood that true mastery comes not from knowing about things, but from knowing things directly, intimately, completely. As you drift deeper into peaceful rest tonight, let yourself imagine standing before the Great Pyramid in the desert moonlight. Feel the presence of those perfectly fitted stones, each one shaped by human hands, each one placed with impossible precision. Let yourself sense the accumulated effort of all those workers, all those years, all those individual decisions to do things right rather than merely adequately. The pyramid rises before you not as an alien artifact or supernatural achievement, but as proof of what human beings can accomplish when they combine vision with persistence, knowledge with craft, individual skill with collective purpose. It stands as evidence that our ancestors were not primitive peoples, struggling with inadequate tools, but sophisticated minds working with deep understanding to achieve lasting greatness. In its perfect angles and precise alignments, you can read the story of human potential unleashed, of what becomes possible when we commit ourselves fully to worthy goals. The pyramid doesn't diminish human achievement, it elevates it, proving that with sufficient dedication, knowledge, and time, there are no limits to what we can build, create, or become. The influence continues to spread, rippling outward through time like the light of distant stars, touching new minds, inspiring new achievements, proving again and again that the greatest human accomplishments arise not from rushing toward goals, but from the patient, persistent pursuit of perfection, one carefully considered action at a time. Tonight, as you rest beneath the same stars that guided those ancient builders, remember that you carry within yourself the same potential that raised the pyramid from the desert floor. The same capacity for vision, for patience, for persistent effort toward worthy goals. The same ability to contribute to achievements greater than any individual lifetime, to be part of something that transcends the immediate and touches the eternal. The pyramid stands complete in the desert darkness, its ancient stones still holding their perfect positions, still teaching their quiet lessons to any who have patience to listen and wisdom to understand. And somewhere in that patient perfection, in that enduring testament to human possibility, the echo of those ancient builders continues to whisper across the centuries, reminding us that the greatest achievements are built not in moments of inspiration, but in the accumulated dedication of countless ordinary days. When ordinary people choose to do extraordinary work, stone by stone, choice by choice, dream by dream, until the impossible becomes inevitable and vision becomes reality that will endure for ages yet to come. The morning light creeps across the plateau once more, but this time it illuminates something different. The pyramid stands complete, its geometric perfection catching the first rays of dawn, like a beacon calling across the centuries. Yet even in this moment of culmination, the story continues to unfold, because the builders understood something profound about the relationship between ending and beginning, between completion and legacy. Picture the final morning of active construction. The last tools are being cleaned and stored away. The great ramps that spiraled around the pyramid like stone serpents are being carefully dismantled, their materials salvaged for future projects. The temporary villages that house thousands of workers are beginning the slow process of transformation. some structures being abandoned to the desert wind, others being converted into permanent settlements for the priests and caretakers who will tend the monument for generations to come. But there's no sense of emptiness in this transition, no feeling of anticlimax. Instead, there's a quality of quiet satisfaction that permeates the entire complex. The workers move with the calm efficiency of craftsmen who have completed something they knew from the beginning would outlast them. They pack their belongings with the same methodical care they brought to placing stones, understanding that this attention to detail, this respect for proper process, is what allowed them to achieve the impossible. The master builders gather for one final inspection, walking slowly around the pyramid's base, checking joints that they know are perfect, verifying alignments that have been confirmed countless times. This isn't doubt driving their examination, but reverence. They're taking their leave of something that has been the center of their lives for decades, something that has shaped not just their careers, but their understanding of what human beings can accomplish when they work together toward a shared vision. As the sun climbs higher, casting shorter shadows across the polished limestone faces, you can almost hear the conversations taking place in quiet corners of the complex. Master craftsmen passing final instructions to apprentices who will carry their knowledge forward. Engineers discussing techniques that could be improved for future projects. Foremen making notes about organizational methods that proved especially effective during the long years of construction. This transfer of knowledge isn't formal or ceremonial. It flows naturally from older hands to younger ones, from experienced minds to eager students, the way water flows downhill or seeds drift on the wind. The builders understand intuitively that their greatest achievement isn't the monument itself, but the accumulated wisdom that made it possible. The pyramid will endure in stone, but their techniques, their innovations, their hard-won understanding of materials and forces will endure in the minds and hands of those who come after. Some of the workers are already preparing for new projects. Word has come from the Royal Court of plans for additional monuments, smaller in scale perhaps, but offering opportunities to apply and refine the techniques developed during the Great Pyramid's construction. These men carry with them not just technical knowledge, but something more valuable: the confidence that comes from having accomplished the impossible. They've learned that there are no problems without solutions, only challenges that require patience, creativity, and persistent effort to overcome. They've discovered that the most complex undertakings can be broken down into manageable steps, that the most ambitious visions can be realized through the careful coordination of countless individual contributions. These lessons will serve them well, whether they're building temples, palaces, or monuments that haven't yet been imagined. Others among the workforce are preparing to return to their home villages, carrying with them not just wages and provisions, but stories that will be told around fires for generations to come. They'll speak of the precision required to fit stones so perfectly that knife blades can't slip between them. They'll describe the ingenuity needed to move massive weights using nothing but rope, wood, and human muscle. They'll tell of the satisfaction that comes from being part of something greater than individual ambition. But perhaps most importantly, they'll carry forward the understanding that excellence isn't a destination, but a way of traveling. The pyramid wasn't built by people who were trying to do good enough work. It was built by craftsmen who brought the same attention to detail to the 10,000th stone as they brought to the first. This commitment to quality for its own sake, this refusal to accept anything less than the best they could achieve, is perhaps the most valuable legacy of the entire project. As the day progresses and the dismantling continues, something beautiful begins to emerge. The pyramid, freed from the scaffolding and ramps that surrounded it during construction, reveals its true proportions for the first time. The monument stands alone against the desert sky, its perfect angles creating shadows that shift and dance with the movement of the sun, its polished faces reflecting light with such brilliance that they seem to glow from within. The visual effect is breathtaking. From every angle, the pyramid presents a different aspect, yet each view reveals the same underlying perfection. The mathematical relationships built into its design create a sense of harmony that pleases the eye without the mind necessarily understanding why. It's as if the builders have discovered and made manifest some fundamental principle of beauty, some deep truth about proportion and form that speaks directly to something eternal in human consciousness. Local priests begin the ceremonies that will consecrate the completed monument, rituals that will transform it from a construction project into a sacred space. But even these religious observances acknowledge the human achievement represented by the pyramid. The prayers speak not just of divine favor, but of human dedication. The offerings honor not just the gods, but the workers whose skill and persistence made the impossible real. Word of the pyramid's completion spreads along the trade routes that connect Egypt to the wider world. Merchants carry tales of impossible precision to distant markets. Diplomats return to foreign courts with stories that strain credibility. Scholars begin planning journeys to see for themselves this wonder that challenges everything they thought they knew about human capability. These early visitors approach the pyramid with a mixture of awe and skepticism that will characterize humanity's relationship with the monument for millennia to come. How could ancient people, working with primitive tools, achieve such perfection? How could any organization coordinate such a massive undertaking without modern communication and management techniques? How could human hands create something so flawless that it seems almost supernatural? Yet there it stands, undeniably real, provably human in origin, challenging assumptions about progress, technology, and the relationship between past and present. The pyramid forces its observers to reconsider their understanding of history, to acknowledge that advancement doesn't always move in straight lines, that ancient minds were capable of insights that modern thinking sometimes struggles to comprehend. As months pass and the seasonal rhythms of the Nile reassert themselves over the plateau, the pyramid begins to settle into its role as a permanent feature of the landscape. The perfectly fitted stones adjust minutely to their loads, finding their final positions with the patience that characterized their placement. The internal chambers maintain their precise alignments, their walls true, their ceilings level, their passages clear. The monument becomes a teacher whose lessons grow more profound with time. Engineers studying its construction discover principles that won't be formally codified for centuries. Mathematicians find relationships embedded in its dimensions that point toward truths about geometry and proportion. Astronomers marvel at alignments that demonstrate an understanding of celestial mechanics that rivals modern knowledge. But the pyramid teaches more than technical lessons. It demonstrates the power of sustained collective effort, the value of long-term thinking, the importance of maintaining standards even when no one would notice small compromises. It shows what becomes possible when individual skills are coordinated toward a shared vision, when temporary setbacks are seen as problems to be solved rather than reasons to abandon ambitious goals. The monument stands as proof that the greatest human achievements arise not from sudden bursts of inspiration, but from the patient accumulation of incremental improvements over extended periods. Each stone that was quarried, shaped, transported, and positioned represented a small step toward an impossible goal. Yet the accumulation of these small steps transformed vision into reality, dream into enduring stone. This lesson resonates across cultures and centuries, inspiring projects that build upon the foundation of confidence established at Giza. If ancient people could achieve such perfection with simple tools and patient effort, what might be possible with improved techniques and accumulated knowledge? The pyramid becomes not just a monument to past achievement, but a challenge to future ambition. As seasons cycle into years and years into decades, the pyramid's influence begins to manifest in unexpected ways. Craftsmen who worked on its construction carry their elevated standards to other projects. The precision demanded by the monument's geometry becomes the expected norm for significant construction throughout the kingdom. Quality improves not because of new regulations or oversight, but because workers have experienced what's possible when excellence becomes the only acceptable standard. The organizational techniques developed for coordinating the massive workforce find application in other large-scale undertakings. The methods for maintaining quality control across thousands of workers and decades of construction become part of Egypt's administrative toolkit. The logistics systems created for moving millions of stones are adapted for military campaigns, trade expeditions, and agricultural projects. Even the social innovations prove influential. The workers' villages, with their organized distribution of food, medical care, and housing, become models for other communities. The recognition that well-fed, well-treated workers produce better results influences labor practices throughout the kingdom. The understanding that great achievements require not just individual skill, but collective commitment shapes approaches to education, training, and social organization. The pyramid's mathematical sophistication inspires advances in engineering and architecture that extend far beyond Egypt's borders. Trade routes carry not just goods, but ideas, spreading insights about proportion, alignment, and structural integrity across the ancient world. The monument becomes a reference point for precision, a standard against which other achievements are measured. Yet perhaps the most profound influence is psychological. The pyramid proves that human beings can achieve things that seem impossible, that the boundaries of the possible are often self-imposed rather than absolute. This realization liberates human ambition, encouraging projects that might never have been attempted without the pyramid's example. As you drift deeper into restful sleep tonight, let yourself feel connected to this great chain of achievement that stretches from those ancient builders to the dreamers and creators of every age since. The pyramid stands not as a relic of a vanished past, but as a bridge connecting human ambition across the centuries, proving that the drive to build, to create, to transform vision into reality is one of the defining characteristics of our species. The techniques pioneered at Giza continue to influence construction projects today. The understanding of materials and forces first developed by those patient craftsmen underlies modern engineering principles. The organizational methods created for coordinating massive undertakings inform contemporary project management. The commitment to quality that guided every aspect of the pyramid's construction remains the foundation of excellence in every field of human endeavor. The monument teaches us that there are no shortcuts to lasting achievement, that the greatest accomplishments arise from the patient application of knowledge and skill over time. It reminds us that excellence is not a destination, but a way of traveling, that the pursuit of perfection in small things leads naturally to extraordinary results in large ones. In our age of rapid change and instant communication, the pyramid's lessons about patience and persistence become even more valuable. It stands as a reminder that some things cannot be rushed, that the most worthwhile achievements often require sustained effort over extended periods, that true mastery emerges not from quick fixes, but from the gradual accumulation of the knowledge and skill. The pyramid continues to inspire because it represents something eternal in human nature, the drive to create something that will outlast our individual lives, to contribute to achievements greater than any single person could accomplish, to transform the impossible into the inevitable through the simple act of refusing to give up. Tonight, as ancient starlight falls upon stones cut with impossible precision 4 millennia ago, the pyramid continues its patient vigil, teaching its quiet lessons to any who have eyes to see and hearts to understand. Its influence spreads outward still, touching new minds, inspiring new achievements, proving again and again that the greatest human accomplishments arise not from rushing toward goals, but from the steady, persistent pursuit of excellence, one carefully considered choice at a time. And in that patient perfection, in that enduring testament to human possibility, we find not just inspiration, but instruction, not just wonder, but wisdom, reminding us that we too carry within ourselves the same potential that raised the pyramid from the desert floor, the same capacity for vision and persistence that can transform any worthy dream into lasting reality, stone by stone, day by day, choice by choice, until the impossible becomes inevitable and the temporary becomes eternal. And so we reach the end of our gentle journey through time, back to that moment when human hands last touched the pyramid's perfect stones. The workers have returned to their villages, carrying with them not just wages and provisions, but something infinitely more valuable: the knowledge that they participated in creating eternity. Their footsteps fade into the desert silence, but their achievement remains, patient and permanent against the endless sky. Picture the pyramid now in the gathering dusk of that final day, standing alone for the first time since construction began nearly 3 decades earlier. No scaffolding mars its perfect lines. No ramps spiral around its faces. No sounds of construction echo across the plateau. Just geometric perfection rising from the earth like a prayer made manifest in limestone and granite, its polished surfaces catching the last light of day and holding it like captured starfire. The silence that settles over Giza isn't empty. It's full of completion, heavy with the satisfaction that comes only from work done perfectly. Every angle measures true. Every joint fits flawlessly. Every passage aligns with celestial precision. The pyramid stands not just as a monument to a pharaoh, but as proof of what becomes possible when human vision combines with human patience, when knowledge meets craft, when individual skill serves collective purpose. And there's something deeply comforting in knowing that this achievement, born from nothing more mysterious than careful planning and persistent effort, will endure long after the civilization that created it has faded into legend. The pyramid doesn't need maintenance or protection. It simply is solid and certain, a fact written in stone that will outlast empires and inspire wonder until the end of time. The builders understood something profound that we sometimes forget in our rush toward instant results and immediate satisfaction. They knew that the greatest achievements arise not from hurrying toward goals, but from the patient accumulation of small, precise actions over time. They proved that excellence isn't a moment of inspiration, but a way of working, a commitment to doing things right, even when no one would notice small shortcuts. Each stone they placed was an act of faith in a future they would never see. Each measurement they verified was a gift to generations yet unborn. Each joint they perfected was a promise that their work would endure. They built not just with limestone and granite, but with hope and dedication, creating something that transcends the boundaries of any single lifetime. As you rest tonight in the peaceful embrace of your own bed, let yourself feel connected to those ancient builders across the vast sweep of centuries. Their patient hands shaped stone. Your patient choices shape the world around you. Their dedication to excellence influenced everything that followed. Your commitment to doing things well contributes to achievements you may never fully see. The pyramid stands complete in the desert darkness, its perfect angles still challenging our understanding of what's possible with simple tools and determined hearts. 4,000 years have passed since its capstone was placed, yet its lessons remain as fresh as morning light, that the impossible becomes inevitable through patience, that perfection emerges from attention to countless small details, that the greatest human accomplishments arise not from rushing toward goals, but from the steady, persistent pursuit of excellence, one careful choice at a time. Sweet dreams, and remember that you too carry within yourself the same potential that raised the pyramid from the desert floor, the same capacity for vision and persistence that can transform any worthy dream into lasting reality, the same ability to contribute to something greater than yourself, to be part of achievements that will outlast your individual lifetime and touch the eternal. Tonight, the pyramid keeps its patient vigil under stars that guided its construction, teaching its quiet lessons to any who have wisdom to listen and hearts to understand. And in that teaching, in that enduring testament to human possibility, we find not just inspiration, but instruction, reminding us that the greatest achievements are built not in moments, but in the accumulated dedication of ordinary days, when ordinary people choose to do extraordinary work, until vision becomes reality and dreams become stone that will endure forever. The Great Pyramid stands complete, a meditation in limestone, a prayer made visible, a dream transformed into reality through nothing more mysterious than human patience, skill, and an unshakable belief in the possible. Sleep well, knowing that its influence continues to flow through time like the Nile itself, carrying inspiration forward into ages yet unborn, proving that when we commit ourselves fully to worthy goals, there are no limits to what we can build, create, or become.